to preach quite often, I would think, something along those lines at any rate. I'm going to go ahead and ask you to turn in your Bibles to Luke chapter 2. Luke chapter 2 for our text that we will get to in a minute. Of course, as parents, we all want our children to grow up properly in the Lord. We don't want to be raising heartaches, so to speak. And some, admittedly, have had to deal with that. Maybe raise kids that aren't Christians. Hopefully, we'll raise them in such a way that they will be a Christian. Sometimes maybe there's nothing that can be done that would alter that outcome. But I think that God puts a lot in the corner of the parent to hopefully make that happen. Of course, I hope that my children grow up and seek the image of Christ. That's what I've always hoped. Of course, I want other things for them. I want good health for them. I want good jobs for them. I hope they're going to be good stewards of the things that they have, their health and other things, so that they can do the work that God has given all of us to do, and do it for a long time, do it effectively. I desire for them to be respected in this life, not for superficial reasons, of course, but because of the way that they live and act and influence, that they can influence other people, like elders are to be. You read 1 Timothy chapter 3 and verse 7, you talk about an influence. Those elders are supposed to have a certain reputation among those who are without. We are to remember that. I don't want them to be like me. And you shouldn't want them to be like you either. I want them to be like Christ. So much better than I could ever even hope to be. And that's not saying there's some ways that I hope that they act like me. But I really want their aim to be like Christ. The scriptures really tell us, when we're talking about Christ, it tells us very little about his childhood. We have some different stories, his very early days and years. We have the manger scene and all of that. We have the visit of the Magi in Matthew chapter 2. We have the stories about his flight to Egypt and return to Nazareth, but not really a whole lot of details about Jesus' actions at those times. Certainly, he was a baby. But we do have this one in Luke chapter 2, at the end of the book. Verse 41 says, his parents went to Jerusalem every year at the feast of the Passover. And when he was 12 years old, they went up to Jerusalem according to the custom of the feast. When they had finished the days, as they returned, the boy Jesus lingered behind in Jerusalem. And Joseph and his mother did not know it, but supposing him to have been in the company, they went a day's journey and sought him among their relatives and acquaintances. They had gone about 20 miles, and their 12-year-old was not with them. That would be scary. So when they did not find him, they returned to Jerusalem seeking him. Now it was that after 3 days they found him in the temple, sitting in the midst of the teachers, both listening to them and asking them questions. Parents, would that frighten you? I can remember searching for kids before they get loose and all this kind of stuff, and 5 minutes seems like forever, doesn't it, when you can't find one of your children? Imagine 3 days. Verse 46 says, so it was that after 3 days they found him in the temple, sitting in the midst of the teachers, both listening to them and asking them questions. And all who heard him were astonished at his understanding and answers. So when they saw him, they were amazed. And his mother said to him, son, why have you done this to us? Look, your father and I have sought you anxiously. And he said to them, why did you seek me? Did you not know that I must be about my father's business? But they did not understand the statement which he spoke to them. Then he went down with them and came to Nazareth and was subjected to them. But his mother kept all these things in her heart, and Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and men. So we have this one scene when he's 12 years old, left at the temple, unbeknownst to his parents. And he's going to later state here that we just read, why were you looking for me? Why were you searching all over the place for me? Didn't you know where I was going to be? Seeking be about my Father's business. Or don't you know that I must be in my Father's house? He says in verse 49. His reply is, you should have known where I was. Why didn't you look here first? That's what I want. And that's what you should want as parents. Not that we know the physical location of them because, hey, they're always going to be in the church building or something silly like that. No, spiritual. Sometimes children, as they grow, you wonder, where are they? Spiritually. Where are they emotionally? Where are they in this world? Where's their mind? And I want to be able to ask them that and them say something to the effect like Jesus did. Don't you know I'm about my Father's business? I want to know that that's what they're thinking. And it is a daunting task to put forth in children. I want to know where they are. I don't want to need to worry about what they're into or who they're with, because they're about their Father's business. The end of the passage is what I want to focus on. It tells us how Jesus grew, doesn't it? If I want them to be like Jesus, it makes sense to follow the scriptural blueprint for that. And Jesus increased in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and men, fourfold. So let's begin to talk about that. First of all, I want to talk about this idea. He increased. He increased. What does that mean? Well, it means he progressed. It's a nautical term. Ships aren't made to sit. They go. They forge ahead. You get on a cruise, you're going somewhere, right? And so this idea of increased, as I said, a nautical term, it means to make headway. It means to forge ahead. What he did was something that he did. Jesus, from the point he was 12, he worked toward improving in these 4 areas. That's something we don't expect from young people sometimes. Oh, someday they'll do it, but they can do it from when they're young. And he did this. Why shouldn't we do that? Why shouldn't we do that as young people? Why shouldn't you do that as young people? Why should not we encourage it as parents? And it takes encouraging in that way. First of all, I want to go back to the text. Jesus increased in wisdom. He increased in wisdom. The Greek word, sophos, it means 3 types of things here. It means wisdom and prudence, discretion. We all understand what those things are, knowing what to do in certain situations and things of that nature, the capacity to understand and act wisely in what you understand in the situation that you're in. Second part is to have certain sort of insight. It's more or less a certain type of informal education. Your grandparents would call it the school of hard knocks, because it's stuff that you learn by the wayside, right? That idea and some of you older guys of my age maybe, you remember going to visit your grandparents. My grandmother and grandfather lived in Michigan. I lived in Alabama. We hardly ever had to turn the heat on there, except in the dead of winter. That turned there year round. They had this coal-burning furnace, and they had this central hall, and there's rooms all around the central hall, and right in the middle of the hall is this big steel grate in the floor. And guess what it blows up through there all winter? Hot air. You walk out into the hall, and you learn from the school of hard knocks, if you're barefooted, you'll do it one time, because you'll have grate marks on your feet for a week. And then you can walk around it in your sleep. So you've learned. You get wisdom about that kind of stuff, and that's just a little portion of what this idea of wisdom and gaining wisdom means. Third thing that it talks about here is a specialized knowledge or a skill. I believe that all of these are probably intended. Young people, we don't need to allow them to constantly spend time on the internet or on their phones or something like that. Learn to do some things. Get some wisdom about you. Right? So many people I talk about, we're going to go to a Bible study at the end of April. We're going to talk about young preachers, and one of the older guys is going to talk about young preachers. And I told them one of the things I think that young preachers need to know how to do is work on some things around the house. You know, you spend all your money if you don't know how to do that. You got toilet trouble, need to put in a new toilet, and you're going to spend $500 calling a plumber for something that really is so simple, but it takes 30, 45 minutes to do at most, and it's so easy. Little things like that. Learn some things. You know what? Like house construction hadn't changed all that much. You can fix most things on your car if you just get online and learn about some stuff or listen to Dad. Learn some things when you're growing up. It'll be very helpful. So I believe all these things are probably intended. It's going to make a well-rounded person. And Jesus was certainly that. Learning is important to the development of a young person. Learning language skills. What do certain words mean? We don't need to always, if we're listening to some conversation and they constantly use words, and they may not necessarily be big words, and we're always going, what does that mean? Use English. Well, let's learn some more English. Grow. Simple, isn't it? Spend some time, You're on your phone a lot. Learn the word of the day from Webster's Dictionary. And your vocabulary will increase as you go. Those things are important. Reading skills, important. Mathematics, science, practical knowledge, all these things are intended by this idea of wisdom or sophos. They're needed in adult life. Look at Titus with me. The book of Titus, chapter 2. Verse 4, that they may, this talking about Titus, teaching the older women to teach the younger women, that they admonish the young women to love their husbands, to love their children, and so on and so forth. 1 Timothy now, chapter 5, and verse 14, therefore I desire that the younger widows marry, bear children, manage the house, give no opportunity to the adversary to speak reproachfully. This idea of running a home, something that a wise young woman starts to learn how to do, right? If you never know who you're going to marry. You may marry a young man he's on the way, and he's going to make a whole lot of money. You know what? We're going to eat out every meal. Maybe not. Maybe it is. It's just not going to happen. And maybe you have to cook, and maybe you want to eat some stuff that tastes pretty good. So learn to cook when you're young. Pretty simple thinking, really. How about young men? Make a provision for the family. How about that? What I already talked about: language skills, reading skills, math, science, practical knowledge, and all these areas to make provision for the family. So if we're not wondering where we're going to get grocery budget this month, well, if you're a capable man, you can make it one way or another, right? It's things that can be done. There are consequences to not growing in wisdom. That's going to be someone that don't grow in wisdom is going to constantly be in a struggle. Difficult time providing, difficult time managing, unable to guard against swindlers and things of that nature. Think of those back 10 years ago who signed bank loans for 125% of their house value. And then the bottom falls out. And they didn't have enough income, even at the time, to be able to actually pay back the loan that they're borrowing. Well, that's just real practical wisdom, isn't it? Wow, I make $50,000 a year. Let me spend $25,000 on a house. No, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever, and we ought to know that once we get to be about 16 years old. But it needs to be learned. Maybe some unable to see the path of a certain decision, like Achan. Remember taking the spoil? You think he ever thought, oh, I'm going to take this Babylonian garment and gold and all this kind of stuff, I'm going to hide it in my tent, and I'm going to get my family killed. He never thought that. He never envisioned what's going to happen because of his stupidity and his selfishness. There is a definite danger of the unwise also being misled in the scriptures. We need to be wise. So we've got to encourage them to develop not only in those other areas, but also to be wise in the Word. And this is also going to overlap with growing in favor with God. Okay? How many warnings are there in the New Testament about false teachers? It's rife with them. So parents, encourage your child to increase in wisdom. Young folks, please listen to me. Spend time in the Word, really studying the Word. If you've got questions about what you read in the Scriptures, ask your parents. And honestly, if they don't give you a good answer, tell them. You know what? If I'm not giving a good answer to one of my children, I want to know it. I think your parents will say, I want to know that. Because the answer is out there somewhere. And we can find it. We can find it together. Because we want to do the will of God. And you know what? I don't know everything that there is to know about the Bible. Yeah, I get up here and preach every Sunday. But hey, it's a big book, right? Really, when you think about it. And I've had my children ask me some questions about the prophets and all that kind of stuff. And I'm studying other things that makes your head want to explode. But I know people that know the answer. And if you're visiting here, you got people like that in your congregation, I can promise you. People that can find those answers for you. So encourage them. And I encourage you, young folks, to do that. Wisdom, it can keep you from joining the wrong crowd. It can keep you from immorality. And among the many, those are among the many benefits. Just read through the book of Proverbs and you'll see that. So he increased in wisdom. Jesus also increased in stature. Now you may be thinking here, he got taller as he got older. Yeah, that's part of it. Human beings tend to do that unless you have some kind of medical problem. We all get taller as we get older until we get about 16, 18. If you're really blessed by God, you won't stop growing tall if you're a man until you're about 21. I quit when I was about 14. Some of these folks, I think Chad's going to finish when he's about 30. His head will be rubbing the ceiling in here. The Greek word is helikia. And the word first means age. Increased in age. Well, that's sure. But especially of maturity. He increased in maturity. And the final sense is he increased in physical size, or he grew. And this almost seems to be out of our hands, right? Except for the maturity part. We're not going to be able to control how they age. Time passes. People get older. Physical size, can't handle that. Can't have an answer for it. But there are practical things to see here. We need to instruct our children in being good stewards of their bodies in the developing years, don't we? I mean, we talk about age and we talk about height and all that kind of stuff, that stature that we think about as stature. Eating the right things. So to be able to reach their full physical potential. Even if they think, well, this has nothing to do with spiritual stuff. Well, what happens to your body? When if I was to, or if I started out when I'm Nathan's age and I eat 2 pounds of sausage a day and that's all I eat, what am I going to be like when I'm 50? I'm going to be in pretty sad shape. I'm going to be struggling with my health. Am I going to be able to do the work of the Lord? Probably not. Not as much as I need to. So we need to teach them to take care of themselves. You need to teach your children, young folks, take care of your bodies. Okay? Treat it right. Jesus seems to already understand what Paul's going to later tell us. 1 Corinthians chapter 6:19. Do you not understand or do you not know that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have from God? You are not your own. This idea of Jesus increasing in maturity. It's also back in the book of Ecclesiastes, if you want to turn there with me. Chapter 11. Ecclesiastes chapter 11. We'll start in verse 9. He says, "Rejoice, O young man, in your youth, and let your heart cheer you in the days of your youth. Walk in the ways of your heart and in the sight of your eyes. But know that for all these God will bring you into judgment. Therefore remove sorrow from your heart. Put away evil from your flesh, for childhood and youth are vanity. Remember now your Creator in the days of your youth, before the difficult days come, and the years draw near when you say, I have no pleasure in them." He goes on this long talk about the difficult days that are coming to every human being when they get older. But it tells us something. Youth is not an excuse. to play fast and loose with God. Remember Him while you're young. And if you do that while you're young, it's going to be that much easier. The older that you get, it's going to be good with you as far as that goes. So develop emotionally, physically, also spiritually. Jesus increased in favor with God. Of course, this refers to His spiritual development. And this idea of increasing or improving in your spiritual development is what drives me crazy with some parents that I witness. Especially, you get on Facebook and stuff and you see some crazy stuff that parents do. This is what bothers me. It's supposed to increase in favor with God. And all that stuff I've already said is very important. But is this not supreme importance? A relationship with the holy God? Yet some people, you would think that it was school or their health, like we just talked about. But little concern about spiritual things. It's shameful, really, when you think about it, isn't it? Of course, we should want good things in those other areas. I want them to be healthy. I want them to be successful. I want them, if they're going to do school, do it well. Do it. Give it all you got, what you got. Right? Do your best. But put spiritual things first. You know, some parents would scream bloody murder if their child wanted to drop out of school. If they wanted to just engage in really, really heinously bad dietary practices, right? They wanted to never get any exercise, just lay around all the time. Something like that. But yet they're oblivious to spiritual slides. They don't want to declare to prepare for Bible class. I don't want to push them away. Okay. I didn't realize encouraging them to study the Bible and preparing for Bible class is pushing them away. Seems like it's pushing them towards it in the right way. I don't want to go to church today. Oh, it's okay, baby. I don't want to drive them away. How many times have you heard something like that? Does it ever shock you? It should. We should be shocked and floored anytime we hear anything like that. That type of behavior baffles me. Certainly, some of what was said about wisdom is going to cross over here, as I already said. A truly wise man will put his relationship with God above everything else. The consequences of not putting time into growing in favor with God are certainly dire. We need to make sure that we're encouraging them to do this. And it's something that's got to be integrated into all development in life. Not compartmentalized. It's got to spill over into everything. We're not Christians here, and while we're doing our Bible study, then we go to school, we get in science class, and we become atheists, right? They believe in the Big Bang or something like that. It doesn't work that way. God demands your all. So be about your Father's business. Grow in favor with God. We're also to grow in favor with man. Sometimes you run across a Christian or two that bristles at that idea. Jesus did it. I think we should. Here is the social aspect of Jesus' growth. And we should not neglect ours. He did not neglect his. We shouldn't neglect ours. Paul wrote about the social aspect of being an elder. Look at 1 Timothy 3. I referenced this earlier, although we didn't go there and read it. 1 Timothy chapter 3 and verse 7. Moreover, he must have a good testimony among those who are outside, lest he fall into a reproach and the snare of the devil. It's got to be someone with a good reputation. Everybody thinks he's a scoundrel? Probably not good elder material, right? Does he have a reputation as a cheater? Reputation he's a thief? Not good elder material. He has a good reputation among the... Is he a brawler? Is he someone who screams at people? Not a good elder material, right? Look at 1 Thessalonians 4 now. 1 Thessalonians 4. Paul instructs these Christians about the same kind of thing, starting in verse 9. But concerning brotherly love, you have no need that I should write to you, for you yourselves are taught by God to love one another, and indeed you do so toward all the brethren who are in Macedonia. But we urge you, brethren, that you increase more and more, that you also aspire to lead a quiet life, to mind your own business, to work with your own hands as we commanded you, that you may walk properly toward those who are outside, and that you may lack nothing. Good reputation, something to be increasing favor with man. Don't give them a reason to hate you, believe it or not. Witness Christians who make no effort whatsoever in this area. And that's not a good thing. Maybe appear to believe that made them more holy somehow. And that's not the case. Those who don't have a heart for their fellow man do not have a heart for Jesus Christ. We got to remember that the gospel is a message. It's good news. It is a message to be spoken from one person, the saved, to another person, the lost. Live your lives in such a way that they recognize that they want what you have. And I think that may be one of the best lessons we can take from that particular section about growing in favor with man. You know, why would someone care what a scoundrel, a liar, or a cheater, or something like that said about righteousness? They're not going to believe anything. You're someone who's difficult to get along with, or you treat others unfairly, it's going to put you out of favor with man. And for no good reason. There's no reason to act that way. Matter of fact, however it was that you were saved, whether it was a church service and you came forward or whatever it was, you know what you did? When you put off the old man with all that stuff that's against God and you put on Christ. Sometimes we leave some of the garment on or something. And we keep acting the same old way. We're not to do it. We cannot forget that. Being out of favor with men because of personality is going to, of course, hamstring your efforts in the kingdom. Matthew 5 and verse 13, you'll know this well. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its flavor, how shall it be seasoned? It is then good for nothing, but to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. You are the light of the world. The city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor they light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. Romans 12 and verse 18 says, if it is possible, as much as depends on you, live peaceably with all men. Hebrews 12 and verse 14, pursue peace with all people and holiness, without which no one will see the Lord. 1 Peter 2, verse 17. Honor all people. Love the brotherhood, fear God, honor the king. Well, it's a simple message, isn't it? It can be hard to implement, but you know what? That's why it's work. We work towards these things. And as parents, we encourage them. As grandparents, we encourage them. Don't get lazy. Young people don't get lazy. Parents don't get lazy. Grandparents don't get lazy about this. Order your life so that you can grow in this kind of well-grounded way. If you're not doing these things, go ahead and start now.